Paul, I'm just a little concerned that the Deputy Mayor's sitting in the room with
Oh, you're a general manager today.
Well, it's been a fight. I'm
worried about this person waking up.
Well, we know that.
saying she's losing weight.
I know, and I was going to say that. You know, you've been looking after your weight. You've gone a bit too far, Angela. A bit too far. But I'm just glad that nobody made me wear a witch hat sitting at the top of the table. I shall be forever grateful for that. Oh, that is dad joke of the day.
That was excellent.
Yeah, that was a very good joke. All right, back to serious business. Welcome, everyone. Thank you to staff for giving us a light moment to start our day, reminding us that there's going to be lots of people knocking at your door tonight looking for chocolate and sweets. But anyway, Tame, would you like to open the meeting for us, please? Thank you.
Knocking because I had my son ready saying no lollies at this place. But I think I like that view as tell me one Māori word you know and then I'll give you a lolly. So I'm going to change my tactic to this afternoon. If you tell me a Māori word, you'll get a lolly. You tell me two, I'll give you two lollies.
Wow.
So they're going to say kiri kiri roa. I'm sure.
I'm coming to your house.
But also I want to, I was at a farewell bit of a kai yesterday across here at Sachet restaurant, and I just want to acknowledge Te Waka, who is close or will come to an end of what they were doing in the community, Te Waka, and Hamish and their team. So I just want to acknowledge them for the wonderful work they went out, but they try to work with councils, but there's still a lot of work to do. So I just want to acknowledge them. Koutou ngā me mō te kaunera, ka nui te mihi atu ki a koe e te manu ka koe, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe. Kia Emma, kei rungi te pau whakata nei, tēnei te mihi atu ki aia hoki, mihi ana ki te kui ni hou, nā wai honu i te pō, me te honga ko whetu rangitea ko huri ki te tua o te arai. Ka nui te mihi atu ki a koutou e chaki ana i tēnei tāne. Tino nui ki tōku ngākau, ko kirikiri roa, hamutana, no reire e te atua arahi rātau i rungi te teka me te pono, i rungi te ngoto mātou kai whakaora, mā ake ake, āmini. Have a good Halloween, everyone.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll go into the, are there any apologies? I don't know. Councillor Mark for partial attendance. Okay. We're going to try and be expedient today and liberate people quite early today, so do not give a guess at the time, anyone, because we know that jinx it. All right, we'll note those. Thank you, Jeff. And if you're wrong, I think the coffees are on you. That's quite a few of them, right? All right. Move the apologies be accepted. I'll second it. All in favour, say aye. The agenda is as confirmed. Also move Deputy Mayor will second. Does she? She does. Thank you. Oh, Mark's arrived, but he's still partial attendance, so it's okay. Emma.
I just wanted to make a quick mention that today is also Diwali, Festival of Lights, and a big celebration for our Indian community and many around Hamilton Kirikiriroa. So just wanted to also wish everyone a happy Diwali today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I'm sad that I won't be able to attend the big event this year in Inniscommon, but I wish our Indian community all the best with what is a fantastic celebration. And if there are any Hamiltonians listening on the live feed, you can go and participate and join in. It's for everyone. Everyone. So go down to Inniscommon and have a really good time because it's great. Okay, so where was I? Confirmation of the agenda. I moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Leary. All in favour? Any declarations of interest? Being none, we move on. I don't think we have any public forum. So we'll go to the confirmation of the council open minutes of the 12th of September, and I looked and didn't see anything I needed to comment on, so I'll move. Anybody else there? Maxine, your second. Anything else? All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the elected member briefing notes of the 25th of September. I also have looked through those. Don't see anything to... Most things carry on into the meeting anyway. So I'll also move. Seconded by Councillor Max. All in favour? Carried. Chair's report. Oh, have I missed one? I have. I've missed a briefing item, sorry. Another briefing item, item 8, confirmation of elected members' briefing notes and another date. Also move. Max will second. All in favour? Now we can go to my report. I'm going to largely take it as read, actually. Wrote this a while ago, and as you do, to meet timelines, and everything moves quite quickly. But I do want to thank staff and some of our consultants, plus LGNZ in Wellington, for putting together a really full day of meeting with key stakeholders in Wellington on the 1st of October. Primarily of their wearing my Metro sector hat to talk to Minister Brown, but it's always good to be able to use Hamilton examples when you're doing that as well. And I met with a number of stakeholders, including Business New Zealand, NZTA, Department of Internal Affairs, Ministry for the Environment, and I circulated the notes to you from my iPad. So hopefully you find those. I know they come in poor grammatical form because they're notes, but I hope if there's anything that arises from those notes, you would come and ask me for more information. We've all seen the good news about being the fastest growing city again. No surprises there. We've all received, as Angela mentioned yesterday, an email from our previous colleague, Dave McPherson, saying pretty much 3 words, "I told you so." So we all had a smile at that. So actually what that shows us is the pressure remains on, the opportunities remain with Hamilton, which is the good part. We have so many opportunities arising from growth to build our economy, to create a city where people want to live, work and play for a very long time. The pressure side of it, of course, is the infrastructure side that we've all been talking about for some time, including the Infrastructure Commission, who's made it clear in their report that there are eye-watering sums coming New Zealand's way to build the critical and core infrastructure that we need. So it's something we're in together. We're going through our LTP, looking at local water done well over the next few months. And this will be critical to what the rest of our business looks like, but also how we're able to deal with growth. The only other issues I've mentioned there, I know you all share my concern around the CBD. We're all united in the aspiration to revitalise the CBD. We're all aware that to do that we have very little budget, but we have some, so we may have to think smartly about how we use resources and create resources to do the CBD. I have had lots of conversations with social agencies and with the police around the antisocial behaviour, which we do note is trending upwards, affecting some business confidence. It's sad to see that, but some things are trending the right way. The police on the front line is having a really positive impact. And I'm sure when you see them, like I do, when we're out and about in our lunch break, it's really pleasing to see the police presence there. They look pretty relaxed and they look approachable. And I know that they've been able to apprehend a few people and catch some crime in action. So that's really excellent too. So I thank the police for their work. My concern lies with the resourcing of the social agencies who pick up the social and mental health issues. Now, I need to mention also that Councillor Maria has taken over from Malena, yes, Councillor Malena, around Safer City. So she had her first meeting, which was a bit of a baptism by fire, but we're pretty confident that some good things are going to come out of that with the work that Calvin is also doing to support it. Just last one, Mayfield Enderley has been on my mind since I very first became mayor. I'm aware that we do such a fantastic job at revitalisation of our green fields. You know, there's a green paddock, we build a bridge to it, We create a beautiful subdivision. It's got new playgrounds, new roads, new everything. And we've seen that, of course, happen up north, and how fabulous is Te Keti Aranui. We do have some areas of our city that are older and need, you know, some revitalisation. And I'm a bit of a fan of urban revitalisation. Looking at some of the partners that we have in Fairfield and Enderley, it struck me as that would be a good place to focus. With Kohau Health, Te Papanui Enderley House, and a bunch of other developers taking a key, Kāinga Ora, and other developers taking a key interest. So Kesh and I have had good conversations about this, and I want to keep it on the radar. There is very little money, and there are some barriers around water infrastructure. But where there's the will, there's a way, and I will keep putting it on the table for conversation, because eventually I'd like to see all of our areas that are older and more struggling more to be thriving just as well as the nice areas. So that's my goal there. And I just wanted to put it in my report so that it doesn't get, and Blair's giving me a look because he knows how passionately I feel about this. So it doesn't get under a big pile of other work and forgotten about for a very long time. So thank you, Council. Any questions for me? Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, no, it's debate rather than
Okay.
questions, but I'll just wait till.
Thank you. Councillor McIndoe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for a very clear report. Under the first section, the general updates, appreciate the importance of your engaging with the ministers in Wellington. Have they given you any indication yet as to whether there is the possibility of some significant change in funding of local infrastructure? Where would you say the ministers are at this point?
Look, I think they're working on what's on their table, which is the regional deals.
Yeah.
Fast tracking, so they've just recently got that. So that's what we talked about, but we talked about how we line it up with the fast growth aspirations of New Zealand. In other words, we're trying to encourage government and the metro sector to come closer together to understand what we can deliver on their behalf, because they want new houses, they want new businesses, new schools, all of those things that we do too. So new water infrastructure. So we talked about that. Since then, anything more recent? We did get a little bit of through the officers, some news that we may be lucky enough to be in that top the first five to be considered for a regional deal. That would be excellent if that happened.
It would be.
Do you want to say anything more to that, Blair?
Yeah, thank you. Through the worship, we hosted recently, or Mayor Paul and Future Proof Mayors hosted Minister Bishop to Hamilton, and of course Minister Bishop is responsible for RMA reform, housing, and also he spoke, as Mayor Paul has said, around a range of future-proof initiatives. He talked about the three pillars of the reform program around housing and infrastructure and funding and financing, and he did say that the third pillar, which is in relation to funding and financing, is probably the pillar that's least advanced in terms of the work program, and that is the area, councillors, where financial incentives, including things such as monies available to council as they deliver a certain number of housing numbers, may be available. So that's still to be detail to be provided. As Mayor Paula has said, our discussions with the minister were very fruitful, and subsequent to then we have heard very positive signals that we may be one of the 5 areas of New Zealand invited to submit a regional deal proposition. So that's encouraging, which would then get us into the more detailed conversations around the various topics that you are asking about, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, one other question, Your Worship, under the discussion of the declining situation in the CBD, and I'm sure we all share your concerns, as does the general public. You mentioned that the discussions involve social agencies. To what extent are local mental health and addiction services being involved in that discussion? I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, I'm just trying to tease out, because I believe it's very much a mental health and addiction issue as much as a criminal issue.
Absolutely is, and as you know, we had a long corridor conversation after the event that was in the paper about how we draw social agencies closer together. Obviously, it's not council's job to do that, but I reached out to the People's Project, I reached out to the shelter, Te Korowai, sorry, the new name.
Te Whare Korowai, yeah.
Te Whare Korowai. and a number of other social agencies, but including MSD. But I haven't facilitated a conversation that has come together, but I have made it quite clear that we want to understand what they need, what they're doing to address the issues that we're seeing on the street. And we're trying to stay in our lane, Tim, which is about the revitalisation of the CBD.
I appreciate that, and I'm sort of trying to just ensure that those who could step up are doing so. Because Te Whara Kurawai, of course, has certain rules that will exclude some of the people causing the greatest disturbance in the community from being able to be accommodated there because of the safety of the other guests and the staff.
Yeah.
I know that's just a point, another observation I'm making, but I'm just trying to tease out to what extent greater resources being put into the mental health and addiction space, because it's not a police issue on its own.
No, I understand, however, they've got a police liaison. Maria, they said that in that meeting, didn't they? They've got a police liaison talking with most of the social organisations at the moment to understand what it is they need and to work closer together. But I've also asked them to tell me what I could, because I'm a politician, what I could do to support their voice to central government for what they need. And my understanding is that they're all really, really stretched at the moment. And, you know, there's a lot of issues to deal with. We do probably need to elevate a conversation with central government at some stage about the needs of our social sector.
Thank you.
Councillor Naidu-Rofe?
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Just thank you for including the paragraphs on Fairfield Enderley in your report. I just wanted to, I mean, we've since had a quick catch up with staff, but just your view on what do you hope, you know, when do you hope to see something come through, if at all, and how do we manage, you know, timing and the community's expectations, because they've been waiting for something for a while now. And you've touched on the funding constraints. I was just, you know, hoping to give you an opportunity to expand on that.
Yes, so it's one of those really tricky things, because I'm personally a little disappointed as I kicked the project out of the gate on nearly 4 years ago. I asked for, but it's not. But there are some genuine barriers to that. Now, we did have some work done on a Fairfield strategy under a previous staff person who wasn't here, Fairfield Enderley strategy, that the community worked on as well. People like Te Reiti Moxon's team from Te Koha Health, Joe from Te Papanui Enderley House, etc., had some input into it. You're working very closely with Maria in terms of the community centre. I've asked for another meeting before Christmas with all the parties from Fairfield Enderley to see how they're feeling about it, including the developers who are either building affordable housing, public housing, or rental housing. There's a couple of players. The barrier is water, is linking new subdivisions into the wastewater system in particular. There are some small solutions for small pockets of Fairfield Enderley that will allow some housing that is consented to go, but to unlock that whole area, even from Enderley right through back to Porritt, would require substantial wastewater investment. And of course, and stormwater, sorry. And so there's no budget for that at this point in time, unless we were to find reallocation or find budget or work it or find funding partners and a bunch of other things. So it sits in that difficult spot. Meanwhile, I want to make it as easy as possible as for the developers who currently have their fingers in the pie to get cracking, and that's people like Glasshouse Rentals, who do a fantastic job at doing long-term rentals across the city. So, yep, no, you'll be involved in that conversation though, because I know that you're the person who is most regularly in attendance in the local community. So,
Yeah, and Anna.
yeah, and Anna, you know, and it's all, and it links to the work you're doing on affordable housing. When we went on a field trip there recently, so
Thank you.
Just Mayor Paula, just to add
that's
to
my
that,
little sad face.
to next week's Strategic Growth Committee meeting, there is a within the Strategic Issues report quite a comprehensive update on Fairfield Enderley, just bringing together all the information and sort of potential next steps. But in summary, we are absolutely constrained both in resourcing for infrastructure and in staffing. So, but you know, we are responding to the resolution of council,
However, what we all agreed, I think, at that last meeting, Blair, is that we can still carry on with strategic long-term planning for Fairfield Enderley, where people can see sightline of their future and what could happen for them. Because at the moment, there is no vision, the vision is not strong, and people don't know what's coming.
Sorry, are we into debate now?
No, it was an answer to Kesh's question. Have I answered your question? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Porter. In terms of the comments around the central city and the issue around antisocial behaviour, mental health issues and things, I'm just interested in how you see we could pull together information on what Hamilton needs in terms of central government investment and support, so that we can have, I guess, provide a solution and say to central government and say, look, if we've thought about this and we want it funded. So just interested in how we could pull together information to be good advocates.
So I've reached out to the heads of a number of social agencies that hasn't been put in the diary yet to see if we could at least have like a lunchtime conversation where we collect some feedback, remembering that my job would be to facilitate that in the first place, but it's not our core function. But if there's anything I can learn from them that would help me make the correct messages to government, I'm willing to do it, and that's the offer.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go into a debate. I don't think I need to debate because I spoke about my report at length in the end. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks for your report, Mayor Southgate. Look, in terms of the CBD, you know, there are things we can do as a council, I think, and there's things we can't do. There's things we can't impact on that are, I think, society-wide issues at play. But there is a role we can play one of those roles is to improve the physical environment and without spending a lot of money. And thanks to my chair, Councillor Thompson, I've had some involvement in recent months with that. And I want to just mention the leadership work of some of our staff in that area too. Karen Saunders comes to mind, and there's others, and how we make the best use of that money that was set aside in the LTP to get some areas cleaned up and to try and make a tangible difference in a short time. It won't change the world, but it's certainly a good start. In terms of Fairfield Enderley development, I hear what the Mayor's saying, and she has every right to raise her view. I have slightly different views because I think we need to be careful about raising expectations there. Because of the age of the area, there is a massive infrastructural spend, as has been touched upon, required to develop that area in the way that the Mayor's suggesting. And I really question whether we have the capacity or the money to actually get anywhere near that. We are in a massively constrained situation. We've got growth that we can't prevent coming at us from every direction along our boundaries. And my personal view is that Enderley Fairfield project is some way off. And some of this has come about through Kāinga Ora's own processes and their review. But we have this fast tracking in the meantime. And I think that's the ball that we actually have to be playing with at the moment for the good of our city. So I just don't want to, I don't want to pour cold water on the Mayor's suggestions, but I think we need to be careful about raising expectations, particularly for that community as well.
Thank you. Councillor Casey Cox.
Thank you, and I did want to specifically thank you for your advocacy for the Fairfield Enderley community, Mayor Paula. I think that it does present a huge opportunity investing in Fairfield Enderley to achieve affordable housing outcomes and leveraging off some of the work that Kāinga Ora has already done to identify what those opportunities might be. I do understand that in our current long-term plan we have made an investment into the blue-green corridor, which is a significant stormwater investment. So yeah, I'm hopeful that through the process we can have more information. It sounds like it's coming to next week, so that's great to hear about that. But I also want to acknowledge the importance of the community infrastructure that Kesh and I are working on in our meeting with Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa. Their hopes, I mean, the hopes and expectations for Fairfield Enderley are already there. I don't think we're raising them. I think they're there, and they're really being led by the community and by organisations like Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa. And they have a development plan there. What they want is to see the community infrastructure built around it and supporting it, because we've sort of been playing this, what comes first sort of game, I guess, and some of the infrastructure there is in need of attention. So thank you for giving it the focus that you do, Mayor Paula, and I look forward to having more conversation during the LTP amendment conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bidder.
Thank you. There is an article in this morning's Herald by the economist Tony Alexander on affordable housing. I think it is worth reading for everyone. The partial solution is council needs to get the cost of infrastructure projects down. That's the only way it can be achieved.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mayor Southgate. Just want to thank you for your Chair's report and just speak briefly in support of the safety work that you've led in your office. That's been in terms of the Safer City Task Force and the antisocial behaviour that has been going on in the city. The task force that you've led has been since last term, actually. I think you set that up and have achieved some quite significant wins over the years, and particularly last term when you secured the $1 million or contribution from central government. There's been a lot of articles recently on antisocial behaviour in the city, but some of us that have sat round the council table for quite some time, we have seen that this rise and fall. It is cyclical, and gosh, I remember way back in, might have been 2009, 2010, when we got a chap over, David Enwich from New York, who turned around Bryant Park. And at that time, they coined the word streeties. I don't particularly personally like that term. These are people with, as we know, mental health issues in the main. So I think it's a sad reflection of the cost of living. It follows, these kinds of things follow economic cycles as well. But with that easing, hopefully, and with the work that's been done through the Mayor's office, hopefully we will see some of these issues start to decline as we head into 2025. That would be my hope as well. Of course, housing is one of the main drivers, or lack of housing is one of the main drivers as well. So, thanks for your report, and just wanted to make a few comments on that particular issue.
Thank you. Councillor Naidoo-Rove.
Thank you. And I too look forward to the work that's being done in the CBD and how it links to the community portfolio. We're having conversations around CBD activation and play spaces, which directly links to what Sarah's portfolio is talking about. And so how do we get that joined up focus and approach to those types of projects? In terms of Fairfield Enderley, I think as a city we have massive challenges when it comes to growth. You've touched on how fast we're growing in your report as well, Mayor Paula. And handling those expectations, to Councillor Jeff's point, is critical. Because as it stands, we're growing in lots of greenfield areas, but then you need a whole lot of investment into existing areas. And places like Fairfield Enderley, where you've got developers ready to deliver thousands of new houses, which links directly to the affordable housing conversation, I think it needs to be prioritized. I don't know how, but it's something we do need to look at quite seriously. And just in terms of how it's felt at a grassroots level, simple example would be the Enderley playground. We've been talking about the playground since I joined council 5 years ago now. And it started off with, how do we make it look more attractive, to make it look safer? You've got a bunch of metal bars, which we've since painted. But to redo the playground, which is budgeted, staff can't decide where to put the playground because it depends on where the community centre goes and how the new community centre looks. For that to be built, we need developers to contribute to the cost of it. So then you go back to, oh, wait, we need the developers on board, but they don't have the water infrastructure. So at the end of it, you've got a community with a metal bars for a playground and no one being able to do anything about it. So that's quite frustrating for the community.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. There's been lots of comments around this central city, and Councillor Jeff touched on some of the good work already happening. I just wanted to also say, we are fiscally constrained, but there are some existing budgets where we can look to prioritise the central city. For example, we've already done that with the play budget, and we'll be able to look at how we facilitate play opportunities within the central city, but also with our transport budget. I think there's an opportunity there with existing funding to think about good outcomes for the central city there too. So that conversation we can have next week. But yeah, creating a really good environment is a really important part of our role. And also, I think there's an opportunity for us to start thinking about how events happening in the city, actually that we incentivise those event organisers to come and hold the events in the central city. And Deputy Mayor Angela's already kicked off some work in terms of reducing barriers to those events. But, they're already happening in many cases. Why not have them here and help to create that vibrancy and bring people in? So it wouldn't necessarily need a whole lot more resource, but more coordination and some good thinking from council in terms of how we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paul. Look, I just wanted to add my voice and, in fact, support for the Deputy Mayor's comment that this issue regarding city safe and anti-sort of social behaviour has been around for a long time. And I think we've all had an attempt at trying to fix it. It clearly will take a sort of a multifaceted approach. We need multiple agencies. There needs to be sort of a wrap-around. But here's a couple of observations. As someone who lives in the CBD, I see the drug use nearly every day, and I find that really unsettling. And it's not just, the glue sniffers, it's those who are taking more serious drugs in the doorways, and that worries me. I'm fascinated at the fact that our library has become a safe haven for some, and I want the library to be a destination. But I'm mindful that when you have multiple homeless waiting outside so they can get in and use the internet, and you have young families trying to get in, there's an uncomfortable mix. But look, I, like all of you, am really happy to try to do everything I can to fix the problem. And I have faith in Sarah and Jeff and others who are driving the CBD initiatives, and I'm really looking forward to more activation, because this is my critical point. Activation will help solve this problem. You have a purpose for young families to come into the CBD, they'll come in. We have new apartments coming to the CBD, and hundreds of new people living in the CBD will help activate and help this problem. So we do have a role, and I just want to sort of lean in and support everybody trying to make that better. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Because there was a lot said, I will exercise a right to reply on just a couple of matters. First of all, the CBD. I am calling a meeting together of the appropriate chairs who've been working on it. And Angela and I are going to convene that meeting. I'm so pleased with the conversations that have been happening about events, about play, activation and low budget improvements. I think we're all aligned as a council on that with our aspirations. That's good news. Just in terms of Fairfield Enderley, I get that revolutionising one of our oldest suburbs may be far off, but we've got to plan for it and we've got to incrementally improve as we go. I feel so strongly as the mayor, that we cannot leave our older areas of the city behind. And I can't work on everything all at once, but my focus came onto Fairfield Enderley because, like Kesh is right, Fairfield Enderley have been asking for support to revitalise and grow their community, and I want to give them that support in whatever way I can. I know it may take time and it will take planning, but let me just say this, Rotatuna is fabulous if you've been there. It's got the shiniest, newest playgrounds, the most beautiful library in the city, and a whole bunch of new things and lovely quality housing out there. Not everyone in Hamilton lives like that. No, not everyone in Hamilton has the similar standard of community around them. That's what I aspire for. It's a long game. I get that. It is a long game. But if we don't have it on the agenda, we will forget it. And our older areas will become older and older and older. And if all people are to thrive, we should have an equal balance between keep looking after what we already have and making sure it's in good shape, and the new shiny areas that we put on the green grass. It's got to be a balance of both. And that's where I come from on that matter. We'll go to the vote. Thank you for accepting my report. It's been moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the development contributions community grant options, please. Good morning. This is always so super straightforward, isn't it?
Always so super.
Morena councillors, we are here today just to talk about your request for a development contributions grant for small-scale community development that has an equitable impact on infrastructure. At the last meeting, we presented to you that, in our opinion, a grant is the best way to protect the DC policy, its integrity, and because we did a full review just with the LTP recently. So staff recommend that any relief, if it is to be provided, is provided through the form of a grant. This report is here to outline the quantum and the options as requested at the Strategic Growth Committee meeting. We're not recommending whether or not council progresses with a grant. We're simply saying if you wish to do so, this is what it would look like and this is the process that it should go through. You will see in the report that the figure we have suggested is $40,000 per annum, noting that there is no budget within the long-term plan for this one, and if it is approved, it will need to go through the annual plan process. This figure, to come about this figure, we had to make some assumptions around what the grant might look like, and this is outlined in tables 3 and tables 4. And we are working on the assumption that council will wish to provide 100% grant for the amount of DCs that an organisation may be required to pay. The reason that it is this size is because of some of our greenfield growth cells have really high DCs, and some of those could be in the $15,000–$16,000 for a small-scale development. So with this in mind, we have set or suggested $40,000, but it could be worked around on a smaller amount, but we would look at potentially capping the amount that a single organisation could apply for. We could look at proportioning out if there is more demand than what we have, we could look at proportioning that, or we could look at which organisations are most in need. All of these things can be resolved in a future meeting after if you approve the funding. That's all from me. I'll take any questions.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that and for this work. Remember the submission well from the people involved. I'm just trying to get a feel for how many complaints we get about this. Was this an isolated one-off, or do you have a feeling that there, are there a dozen groups in this situation a year? I'm just trying to get a feel for. Part of me is wondering if we're over-egging it, and could just be responding to this cause because it's so perverse, such a perverse outcome, or if there is genuinely a number of groups each year who have this sort of problem.
Looking back over the past 3 years, we've had 3 or 4 applications. Sometimes they get a couple in a year, sometimes none. And so there are a few. Obviously, we're talking about really small-scale development or development that's not creating a lot of demand, so that in itself isolates it to the number. Okay. But I'd estimate we would get maybe 2 to 3 applications a year.
Who are in this situation?
Who are in a similar situation.
Thanks very much.
The staff recommendation, it goes to the annual plan LTP amendment considerations. Would this address the situation of the roller skating club, which was one of the groups that came to the LTP and first raised this issue?
My understanding is the roller skating case has been dealt with through an operational grant for their operations, which has freed up money to pay for their DC grant, but that was the original reason that we did go down this process.
Okay. And in terms of the hockey club, I understand that was an issue as well. Is that also going to ultimately remain outstanding as a...
That one has not been dealt with as far as I'm aware, and remains outstanding. Okay. And are you aware in terms of the roller skating club, they're still arguing their DCs in terms of, We haven't heard anything from our front, but whether or not they're still talking to elected members, I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
Can I just add something? So it's not so much that these are complaints or that people are complaining, it's slightly different in that what's really happening is that there are legitimate DCs for activities that generate demand, but they happen to be community activities, which people want to support and obviously don't have, corporate money behind them. But I think it's realistic to think that once you create a grant for, to fund community DCs, you can expect people to find out and have significantly more applications, because ultimately what they're trying to do is fund their activity, and this is some bill from the council that's making that harder. So I think there's something to consider there, that you're essentially exporting community, demand generating community activities out to a grant. So you will probably attract more, and albeit we're trying to do very small developments. But I'm just a little bit concerned, don't want to set the expectation that the only people that will come forward are the ones that we know about. I think you'll find more will come forward, obviously.
Any other question? Councillor Naidu-Rowe?
Just for my understanding, if this goes through today, then it comes back to the annual plan discussion. The criteria for the grant, would there be another opportunity to look at that?
Yes.
Okay.
My understanding from Amy is that it would go into the annual plan process, and then the grant schedule and the criteria would be approved. What's in here is simply what we use to make some assumptions to understand how the grant might work, so we could apply funding and a funding amount to it.
And so if it's approved, it becomes part of the grants policy,
Correct.
the community assistance, the big one?
It would become a schedule within the grants policy.
Awesome. And so I guess I could park all my criteria questions for if and when that happens. And I just had another sort of random question, but in the criteria or in the assumptions, it says that it would be for applicants where development has a negligible impact, why would we be charging them DCs in the first place?
You can have that one, Greg.
Yeah, so the test for DCs is that demand is placed on the network, so negligible meaning some small amount, which usually would then lead to a very small DC. And you know, we talk about the storage shed, which was perhaps one of the catalysts for this discussion. And I think the DC was in the, you know, small number of thousands, because DCs obviously get really big. You know, they're $1 million DC payments, so I might say that was a small DC, but to that person that was a lot of money. So I think to answer the negligible question, negligible demand still means positive demand, and then a small DC.
Okay. And so just one follow-on is this a simpler process then, or is it not an option to just say DCs under 10,000 could be remitted under your group without it going through the whole granting process?
That you could have that in your DC policy. There's a number of things to think about, but that's one way of addressing this. You wouldn't be, well, I mean, you could say for a community facility. So there's money that you would otherwise collect that you're entitled to. So you're not collecting money for DCs, but that is quite. We'd have to think about it a bit more. But that kind of simple test to try and deal with some of these could work.
Cool. Thank you.
Greg, if we use the example of the skating centre, if they'd just stuck a container on the site and had no new roof area, would that have attracted DCs?
If they put a container on the site,
yeah,
with something happening inside it that generates demand,
what demand would that be generating? No toilets, no rainwater, no traffic, no people.
Well, the first point is if it doesn't generate demand, like this is the Local Government Act test for demand, then obviously no DCs. If that container has got something set up in it which attracts a whole lot of adults and children, and they're playing games in there, you know, and in the main facility there's a toilet, then by the definition in the Act, that's demand generating, because there are transport trips coming in, parking, going in, and this container has activity within it, and it does have a roof. So, yeah, under that hypothetical example, it could attract DCs.
Yeah, so if it's just being used for storage, so that stuff doesn't get nicked from the site.
Well, then there's a industrial category which includes warehousing, so it may also attract DCs under that.
And just understanding the quantum and how that will be affected in the future by the Waters CCO. Can CCOs charge DCs?
CCOs will have infrastructure levies which they need to set to meet certain tests under the new waters legislation. Yeah. The word is at the moment that in the early years they will probably use DCs or essentially borrow DCs, probably just for efficiency reasons in terms of setting up an infrastructure charging regime. So that's not set in stone, but that's the indication we've got. So you could see your CCO using DCs for the Three Waters, you know, for a limited period of time before it establishes its own regime.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Huata, please.
Tēnā korua. If we were to approve the 40,000, I know it says in here that we would have to wānanga about it in our 25-26 annual plan and in the long-term amendment plan, and then it states that there's actually no budget for it. Where's it going to come from?
Good question.
Yeah.
It would have to be either
We're just gonna move things
prioritised or
around.
maybe Lance can answer where new money comes from.
You add it to rates, or we prioritise and stop something else for $40,000. To be honest, $40,000 is rounding, but incrementally, if we start having a lot of $40,000 and other things that pop up in 10-year plans, which has happened in the past, suddenly, cha-ching, cha-ching, we might be up to $2 million, which makes a material difference.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah. Greg, from your understanding of, is there risk to the robustness of DCs if we introduce a policy that enables certain members of the community not to pay DCs?
So Tiki's been very careful about the way she's set up the structure. So in effect, the DCs get paid. There is no carve out from a DC policy perspective. It's not a DC remission. The DC's paid, and then separately, where's it paid from? A grant that council can quite lawfully and happily set up and choose, you know, to pick winners. You can have criteria, you know, to decide whose DCs to pay, you know. So I think Tiki's done a really good job of making that. That is quite an important thing to think about, but I think it's covered off.
Right, and the way Tiki has designed this means our DC process is still our process, so there are DCs, but under certain circumstances, community groups are entitled to apply for what is a grant. And to my colleague's question, that grant is either funded by ratepayers or, more likely in our current financial position, by council borrowing.
But Blair's got yes from the
So
side seat.
just to be clear, so we would be providing a community grant to a community organisation by borrowing more money that the community would then have to pay interest on.
Yeah, like any other OPEX, I think. Okay. I think there is, sorry, Ewan, there is a thing, something that Tiki's done here in the structure is that the DC team are just looking at the impact on council's network. So does it meet the DC test? So because what the grant is doing is saying that the type of developer, so a community developer. So that's not what we're looking at when we assess DCs. We're simply looking at, does it meet, you know, the infrastructure capacity test, and so that keeps it separate. So you're deciding what type of people might get the grant, and we're just deciding, you know, we're just doing a job in terms of DCs.
So just for clarity, what you're saying is actually even these small developments place a demand that triggers under the Local Government Act a DC.
Correct, because if it didn't, they would not get a letter. That
Correct.
would be...
Okay. So we're not changing that. We're just changing who pays for it.
You're changing nothing about the DC policy.
I accept that, but this changes who pays for it.
Correct.
Okay. And let's say if we enshrine this and that it goes through the annual plan process, does that mean at any time elected members could then start tampering with who qualifies? So in theory, we could start saying, look, any community development, including one toilet addition, still qualifies for a discount.
It would be the council's policy. So you, I mean, as the governors, you can choose to have, you know, whatever you like in essence. So what council asked us to do, and what Tiki has done is, if you would like a grant, here's the best version, the one that we would recommend, which obviously doesn't prevent you from changing it. So you could go down all sorts of paths and would try and work out, you know, what that might mean in practice. So, so yes, you can change it as you please. I mean, this is essentially Tiki's best, you know, version of a grant scheme for this purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bidder.
I had another follow-up question. Just using the example of the containers again, or a small building under 30 square metres that doesn't trigger a resource consent or a building consent. Would there be DCs on something like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because you can only require DCs on the granting of a building or resource consent, or application for service connection. So typically it won't come across the desk. So the short answer is no, but you could, the short answer is no because it won't essentially come into the pipeline, but that doesn't mean it isn't placing demand on the network.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Casey Cox.
If we did decide to support this direction, I assume the community team would be the ones developing the grant criteria, etc.
We've been working with the grants team around the criteria and using a lot of the stuff that they have already to try and formulate it. But yes, we'd continue to work with them to make sure that it was implementable and it would have the desired outcomes that we're looking for.
Cool. So that work, I guess, we have a sense that everyone's pretty maxed out in terms of capacity. So, but we have capacity to do the work to develop the criteria for such a grant?
I think we've done most of the work already for it, and it would just be if there's something different that councillors would like us to include that we would veer from that. But essentially most of the work is already done, and then the assessment of applications would form part of the grant cycles.
Right, and then that entirety would be consulted on as part of the LTP amendment?
It might, I'm not sure exactly when it will land. We would have to discuss timing of that with governance, just whether it comes with the annual plan or whether it would land at the first opportunity afterwards.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Final question. Tiki and Greg, just last time this issue was at the committee meeting, there was strong advice around, I guess not amending the policy itself. After doing this work and I guess, kind of looking at the criteria for the policy, has your view changed at all around, around that? Sorry, because I heard there was questions from Councillor Kesh, is it possible to, I'm just interested in, would you say you still strongly advise against it being a carve out in the DC policy?
Yes, I think the grant space protects council to make the decisions it wants around who it wants to support, whereas within the policy you meet the criteria or you don't. And it's a lot harder to add any discretion in there. It's a lot harder to control it than if it's within the grant space, which limits your potential exposure to $40,000 a year at a max. So I think I 100% stand by going the grants route.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No further questions. There is a recommendation that hasn't been moved. I have received some indication that there's a few people who would like to discuss this further in a break. Is that what most people would like to do? Or we just, if it does go no further without a mover? Is there any councillors here who feel they have got a recommendation they want to bring? Because otherwise we just vote it. It goes up or it goes down. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. So I'm not going to do it now because I find these short breaks are never short. So what I will do, is lay the decision making on the table. We'll go on to another item, I think, before we have morning tea, because it's only 10:30. Is everyone comfortable with that? We will come back to the decision on this after the break when you guys will have had a chance to. Is that all right? Excellent. So thank you, staff. We're not doing the decision at the moment, but thank you for your really good report. We will go to the long-term plan amendment update. Good morning.
Kia ora, councillors, and happy Halloween. Hopefully there's nothing too spooky in this report, but notwithstanding the sort of challenges that we face overall that you're well familiar with, the report itself is material that's been sort of well canvassed in previous discussions. I will ask Niall to talk to the report shortly, and I may add a couple of points after that.
I'm happy to move the staff recommendation so that it's on the table, and Deputy Mayor will second. Thank you.
Very much. So I'll just briefly take you through a couple of the key points within this report. So as you can see, the intent of this report is to provide Council with an update on the long-term plan process, scope and timing of the decisions that we need to get Council to land on over the next few months. As you will have seen within the report, we have set out a number of assumptions that we are seeking Council endorse today. So just in terms of some of the key decision points that we are looking for today, and that is firstly around the confirmation of the key assumptions around our local Water Done Well program, around development contributions, our financial strategy, NZTA, and the overall approach that we're taking. You would have seen within the report that we are also seeking some decisions from Council around the reduction in NZTA funding, and we've received notification from NZTA of that funding reduction for the 3-year period 24 to 27. And that is less than what we have assumed in the 2024 LTP. So we're seeking some decisions from you today that we can build into our long-term plan amendment. We're also seeking some decisions in respect of rating to comply with the Waters Reform Programme, and that is to separate out our 3 waters into separate targeted rates. And if Council confirms that, we are seeking a consequential change that would remove our existing service use water and wastewater rates from our rating structure, and those apply to properties that are non-rateable under legislation, and if there is a targeted rate established, that would then apply to those properties instead of the existing service use rates. So overall, the decisions that we're looking for primarily relate to government decisions in respect of water reform and, of course, NZTA, or are things that we would typically do as part of a usual annual plan process. You will see in attachment 2 we have set out a high-level timeline for the decisions that we are seeking to be made over the coming months, and effectively your decisions today will inform the decisions that Council need to make on the 12th of December. At that point, we'll be able to give you a full update in terms of the financial picture and the financial metrics, including balancing the budget and how we stack up against our significance and engagement policy. And finally, I would just note in regards to the water reform that there is some bespoke legislation that we are responding to, and that provides a streamlined pathway for consultation and decision making in respect of water, the establishment of a water CCO, and so we're just taking legal advice at the moment in terms of how we could potentially take advantage of those opportunities to streamline our long-term plan amendment, our annual plan, the water services delivery plan, and bring that together in an efficient way. And lastly, I would just note in that regard that we are waiting on the final tranche of the water services legislation, and that's anticipated to be introduced in December, and that will specify a number of those parameters around financial sustainability and a transitional rating arrangement. So, Madam Chair, I'll leave it there and see if James wants to make any comments.
Thanks, no, very good summary. Now, happy to open it up for questions.
Are there any questions? I know we had a good round of questions yesterday and once before as well. So no, that's not a bad thing. I think we're going to go to debate and then the vote. So I just want to say a few things. First of all, thank you very much to the staff for the work that you've done. And the fact that there are no questions is testimony to the amount of engagement we've had with staff every step of the way of these changes. And for the public at large out in Hamilton, you know, look, I think it's really important that they are aware that change is coming and what is, when and how that is happening. We've just gone through an LTP process. We are only amending the LTP process to take into consideration the legal changes and legal obligations of Local Waters Done Well, and to take into consideration some changes to the transport budget as a result of central government funding into transport portfolios. Outside of that, any other small catch-ups will be done as part of the a normal annual plan business. But I have made it quite clear that we are not going to review everything that we did in the LTP. We worked so hard over many weeks and many hours to land that LTP, and I think we need to stay the course and not be floating up any new ideas for the LTP, because we certainly have no new money. So it's all playing within the same sandpit, really. But yeah, look, the changes that are coming for Local Waters Done Well are not small changes to the community. This is something we're having a conversation with the community about. If there are people out there who would like to know more, they should reach out to one of their councillors or to myself, and we'd be more than happy to bring staff and talk to you about what it means. Meanwhile, I'm happy to go to this recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I fully support the motion that is in front of us today. And I thank the good work of staff, James and others, in bringing this together. There is no doubt how we manage water, this will be the most transformative decision we will have made in my 20 years in local government. Things are going to change. And things will be a little complicated for the first few years of the change as our ratepayers start getting invoices from what will likely be a council-controlled organisation, and this council finds itself no longer really in the water and sewerage business, but still responsible for stormwater. And so I think this is a pragmatic and appropriate step in this journey. I think we are correct in limiting our focus of this LTP variation to just those two critical legislative triggered scenarios where NZTA has no longer been able to provide funding for us in certain transport. And I think it is the correct thing for us as an organisation to say, look, our share will be spent on important transport issues, and I have confidence now that under the new process that Angela has set up, that those projects will be discussed and they will be prioritised in an appropriate way. So this is a signal to local government in New Zealand. Hamilton has got this model and how we're handling it correct. And in fact, I think we'll be one of the lead councils in managing this process and leading the way, the pathfinder. So well done, staff. This is local government done well.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten.
I think you're corrupting some of the wording there, Councillor Wilson. Local Waters Done Well and local council done well, potentially, yes. Thank you. But I mean, let's be clear, though, that a lot of this isn't of our making, but it's us responding to what we're being asked to by government. And so there's a lot of stuff that isn't known. And yes, we do have fundamental changes coming to us and as an organisation, and this will impact directly on our residents in time. But they need to stay informed and advised and up to date with things. Fortunately, we've got a great team working on that so that residents can be informed and updated on exactly what is happening. However, by the by, this LTP amendment does require us to make some changes as well, and decisions that we're going to be making today will be the catalyst for a new world for local government, I believe. And you know, we shouldn't expect that it'll be a big bang, but it will happen and evolve over time. And we have to put the city's best interests and our residents' best interests at the fore. And I believe under Mayor Paula's leadership, that is absolutely happening. We've got good processes set up and excellent staff and work happening to be able to give us the best advice. So, you know, I'll be looking with an open mind to what comes from it and decisions that we'll be making out of it. We have to, though, be open-minded about what opportunities that gives us, especially in terms of the debt to revenue ceiling that we might have access to. So in order to be able to keep up with all of those unknowns, expenses coming at us, we have to be open-minded about that also. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Maxine. Councillor Huata.
There's a well-known saying in Whanganui, ko te awa ko te awa, I am the river and the river is me. And when considering our water and how we look after our water, because it is our job, it's not our right, nor do we have right to the river, we must always consider te ture whaimana, and that it's not just about the physical restoration and protection of the awa or simply water quality. It is about the restoration and protection of the interconnected relationship between iwi, wider community and sector industry resource users. So when we're considering our four pillar, our well-beings, economic, social, cultural, environmental, that it's not just te tiriti o Waitangi that we're referencing, we're also referencing and acknowledging and enacting te ture whaimana, which particularly refers to Waikato and Waipa. Kia ora.
Okay, totally agree. I think we're heading in the right direction here, and I want to thank staff, and I want to thank our consultant Peter Winder too, who I think has done a great job taking us through the process to date. Obviously, look, we know we face massive costs in terms of water, sewage, and there needs to be an efficient way of dealing with it. And a council-controlled organisation, hopefully with Waikato District and maybe with other councils as we go down the track, will have the potential to borrow the necessary funding separate of the council to do the job. A couple of points I want to make though, and one is that this in no way changes the imperative of this council to manage its funds responsibly. Which I don't believe we have done in the last couple of terms. None of that damage goes away. People will get separate bills for water ultimately, but it doesn't undo any of the issues that we face. It doesn't mean we still have to fight our way out of this financial morass that we're in. So let's not think of it as any type of saviour. It's just a process to deal with water and sewage. Secondly, heading on the path of setting up the CCO will allow this council to extend its debt to revenue ceiling from 280% up to 350%, which means we could borrow more money. I don't want to see that occur. And I'm concerned with a reference earlier in the debate about keeping an open mind on that, because I haven't got an open mind on that. I don't want to see us borrow more money. And if we are asked to put in a situation financially where we are forced to borrow more money, then we need to make cuts here. So I just want to put that on the table. I don't want to have that kind of thinking. Just because we've got a higher debt revenue, we must not use that as a temptation and an easy option. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I also want to thank staff and thank Peter for the work that you've done to date on the Waters programme and I mean, it's complicated. There's a lot of work that's going to happen in a very condensed time frame, and a lot of big decisions to make. And so, yeah, really value the work that you have done to date to help us with that. In terms of transport, I think that we have a really good opportunity to actually focus on what we as a council thinks is important and is a priority for the city, rather than being at the behest of NZTA. And I think actually we'll be making better decisions, in my view, in this position, because it means that we're not just looking at projects that fit within the low cost, low risk criteria, but we're actually fixing the intersections potentially that are the most dangerous in the city. So we're prioritising, we have the opportunity to prioritise the things that really need fixing the most. And that conversation will come, but yeah, I think it presents, there's a silver lining to the situation. That's all, actually. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor, oh no, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. We can't lose sight of the reason why we're doing this. Firstly, central government told us we have to, and that's the most. That's the biggest reason, I guess. But secondly, we know that the challenges with growth, and we all know that we are second year in a row the fastest growing city in New Zealand, that we just can't continue to deliver water services that is affordable for the ratepayers. So, as Councillor Wilson pointed out, how we communicate this is going to be absolutely critical. And for me, at the end of this process, if I'm sitting around this table at the end of this, no, perhaps that's years away, isn't it? So no, I will definitely be retired in the Bahamas by then. But I'll look forward to the email from Councillor or possibly Mayor Thompson at that stage when she says, yes, the community were happy we did it. The success for me is always going to be the judgment of the residents on this particular thing, because the magnitude of this change in service cannot be overstated. This is a critical life-supporting service. If we did nothing else, this is the one thing we absolutely get right. So my hope is that the leadership shown through the work, and I echo previous comments by my colleagues. I want to thank Peter Winder. I want to thank staff. I have always said in this space we have world-class staff. I'm trying to look for some of them in the audience, particularly Marion. I don't see her here. We have been incredibly well serviced over certainly the years that I've been, and I know we will in the future. So we have to get this new structure right, but at the end of it, for me, it will be the people that decide how well we did.
Councillor Case-Cox.
Just in terms of the transport infrastructure, I just want to reiterate what I saw in the well-beings, that the cuts to walking and cycling mean that we aren't going to meet our emissions reduction target for 2030, and I think that's something we need to keep talking about and figuring out how we're actually going to achieve the emission reductions that walking and cycling enable us to. And just in terms of the LTP amendment, one of the assumptions is that our amendment will include funding of a waters program that truly supports growth, and I agree with the Deputy Mayor that it's that growth aspect that's so critical. How are we going to grow? Is it going to include Fairfield Enderley or not? Those are the conversations that are so pivotal and important for us going forward. And I guess I just want to remember that this whole huge piece of work has come about because of a critical underfunding of water infrastructure in the past, and largely or partly due or largely due to a reluctance for councils to increase rates and drive the revenue that was really required. So I think it's important to remember that. We didn't get here just overnight. It has been a very long process to this, and that's really costing us a lot of money actually to do this whole reorganisation because of a failure to fund as we should have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutt.
Thank you. I could read out my debate from the 12th of September because I think largely it's still relevant. But I said then that it was the first step on a long journey that will fundamentally change local government forever. And really today is the second step on a long journey that will fundamentally change local government forever. And we're not alone in this, and I think that that's a really salient point, especially when the public is looking at other councils and the way that their long-term plan amendments are being received. Because doing an amendment doesn't mean that we did anything wrong in August, but it's just allowing us to meet central government's new expectations and new timeframes. And I don't believe that anyone is exempt in the country from participating in a long-term plan amendment, and I think that that context is really useful. I said it on the 12th, but I will say it again, that we have to make sure that we bring our communities along on this journey, because most of the decisions we're considering in this process are not optional. We can't continue to underinvest, we can't do nothing. And success in the water space is ensuring everyone has access to clean drinking water, where their wastewater goes where it's supposed to, and that water has somewhere to go when it's coming down on us. And that's not cheap. But the cost of the alternative, the cost of not having clean drinking water, of having sewage in places you don't want it, and having stormwater wreak havoc on our city, those are the costs that are actually too expensive for us to bear. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind when we're talking about these massive, massive changes, because it's easy to think about, oh, my rates bill looks a bit different. Oh, actually, that's a cost we can bear, even if it is unpleasant.
Councillor Bidder.
When you go to a bank to get a mortgage, the bank looks at your income and your expenses. The local government funding agency only looks at income. That is financial mismanagement. They only get away with it because it is secured against ratepayers' houses without their knowledge or consent. Hamilton City Council's income is less than its expenses and will remain so until 2028, and I have my doubts about that. No bank would lend to this council because we cannot repay the loan, regardless of any public good. This is why balancing the books is legally required, yet we have failed to do that every year for 20 years. Once we claimed to balance it by putting DCs as income, no. Yet we are doubling our borrowing in 10 years, no. Increasing our debt to revenue is madness, which is why I expect it will happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Right of reply for me. This debate that we've just had has been an awesome level of debate, because this is the biggest topic that we will probably face in our political careers around this table, which is what we do through this LTP to get local waters done well. This is not about spending over the last 4 or 5 years. It's about decades of underinvestment in core infrastructure here and across the whole of New Zealand. We have grown as a city faster than we ever imagined, or maybe not as fast as Dave McPherson imagined, but we've grown faster. Absolutely, I support the colleagues who say we need to ensure we don't use debt incorrectly. This is not an excuse to use debt nilly-willy. It's the reason to invest wisely. Government said focus on core business, and we did in the long-term plan last year. This year. We must stay this course. We must stay the course, and we must balance the books. We must balance the books. And many of you have said you're not prepared to go away from that. Government requires the way we change. Government requires that we change the way we deliver water services. The cost of this, as others have mentioned, is substantial. And so it's really important that we get this right, and that we create a water services entity, a CCO, that is both cost effective and efficient in building the kind of future that Hamilton needs. And I'm just going to finish on a light comment that I often ponder about, and think about for a social media post, but never do. Ask in Hamiltonian, it's something that they would appreciate about Hamilton. Go and ask any Hamiltonian in the street, and I bet you no one will say to you, I appreciate the new water reservoir in Ruakura. I appreciate the storm water interceptor in Collins Road, or such. They won't. They will appreciate their nice library, Te Ketiara Nui. They will appreciate our zoo, our gardens, the local playgrounds, the riverside walks, the green space that they enjoy with their family. And I just want to make that point. They should care about wastewater interceptors, but there is more to making a city than just core infrastructure. I'll go to the vote.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Well done. Staff can be relaxed now. Have a celebratory coffee because we're going to have a break. Then we'll come back and we'll do that item that lays on the table, recommendations from open committees, and then we'll go into public excluded. So break now until 10 past. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Okay, Ewan, etc. I'm starting. Okay, so where we were at. Sarah, sorry, but everybody, chatty. We're getting all very relaxed.
We're all just a very happy bunch.
Happy work. Okay, councillors, I can make you happier by saying if we get started, you might be liberated for the afternoon. Oh. Okay, so we're back. I know. We're back to item 10. We're back to item 10. And you've discussed, you've chatted amongst yourselves, you've come up with, is anybody going to support the staff recommendation? Which only, as far as I see it,
I think Kesh and I are.
yeah, are you? Okay. And
She's moving it as chair of community.
yeah, and you're moving it as?
Deputy, chair of economic development. But I've done a deal. I get a turtle for this.
Oh, you and your
If there isn't a turtle, and if the finance minister simply wants a hedgehog.
Like the one at Memorial Park.
I said that Councillor Wilson could donate a turtle to the city.
Yes, I've said that if the miserable finance minister won't give me a turtle, I will have to fund it myself.
All right, anyway, so it's been moved, it's been seconded. We've had a good discussion. We understand the ramifications. This just brings more work forward. Doesn't mean we actually do anything at this point in time, isn't it? So we'll go to the debate, and so those people moving it can discuss it. And I don't think we need to have anything else. Everyone understands what's going on here, right? So let's go to debate, and it's mover Councillor Kesh.
As you just pointed out, Mayor Paula, this just keeps it on the table for discussion during the annual plan discussion. I want to thank staff, Tiki, Greg and team, for doing the work on this. It looks quite intensive, and for giving us some options to work with. So looking forward to that future discussion.
Mayor Paula, look, I want to first thank Tiki for the work she's done in creating a workable solution to the problem. And I think she is absolutely right to say, actually, this isn't an amendment to our DCs, because our DCs are very black and white, and they are per the legislation. And this type of activity triggers a DC. So the discussion then becomes, well, is council of a mind to provide a mechanism as a community grant? And what this motion does is it takes that decision further forward, and we will then debate it as part of our annual plan and how we fund it and our priority. And we will do it in the context that basically what we would be doing is getting average ratepayers, both residential and business owners, to subsidise a community entity so that they get a subsidy for their DC. And so we should not do this lightly, and we should not be tempted to make this too broad in terms of the quantum, because we are spending other people's money by providing this remission. However, I think we've had a number of submissions that this is important. We'll stack it up with all the other priorities and we'll land on an appropriate decision as to quantum. But the clear message is all of these activities that trigger a demand and shows a causal nexus between what they're doing and increased demand, including vehicle movements, etc., trigger a DC, and that's the legislation.
Thank you. Any other? No?
For the work that you've done on this. I think that I agree that this needs to remain contained to just those projects where they do have a negligible impact. And when I think of one of the situations that got this conversation rolling, that was the roller skating club, essentially. You know, well, that was an unintentional pun.
Dad joke of the day.
The size of the little storage shed that they put on was probably 4 of our desks put together. And, you know, they paid for all of their own stormwater, so the runoff from that extra, they invested a whole lot of money into the stormwater dealing with the runoff. And, it, you know, it's a very small demand that it's putting on our network. So I think that's where this has to stay. But these kinds of projects, you know, DC's become a significant cost for a community-run, volunteer-run organisation that doesn't have a lot of funding. And so doing this would, I guess, enable them to actually do a project well and not have the extra surprise of several $1,000s added on top of everything else at the end of it for what may just be a small storage area or something. So I think it's a pragmatic way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bidder.
This is a band-aid on a brain injury. The DC policy is a mathematical mess. A Waters CCO will change it completely, and none of you understands it anyway. What you haven't been told is that the DC model allocates $89 million in project costs for 2025, but the LTP budget's on getting just $21 million. So this is on topic. Growth does not pay for growth.
We're just talking about the DCs for community groups.
Correct, I'm getting to that.
Thank you.
$40,000 for community projects isn't a solution. The problem, in contradiction to the claims in paragraphs 8 and 10, is the policy states DCs are based on actual usage, but the staff created a rule to only allow projects over 5 HUIs to be assessed. So big players get special treatment and community groups get screwed for stuff they do not use when we charge them for services that, in these examples, we have not provided. The policy was not consulted on because the full information was never given to the public because it doesn't work. So now we are saying, pay us for nothing, and we will decide to give you some money back, but we don't know how much because we will make it up as we go on a first come, first served basis, and we have a cap regardless of how many need help and how much they have paid. It is a fudge. One of many such is changing the definitions of bedrooms for house DCs.
Scope, please stick to the remission on the.
I hope you apply that same issue to everyone else because you haven't done that before. The solution for community groups is simple, using the council's own rules. If you aren't going to sell the building, which most community groups won't be doing, don't apply for a CCC and don't pay.
Councillor Tauriki.
Yep, I just want to echo the acknowledgements to Tiki and Greg. I personally found the DC sessions last year particularly insightful and useful in terms of my own knowledge, and I don't think the DC conversation is going away anytime soon. I think the quantum that's been requested is you know, in light of the whole, it's a small quantum. Last week I learned, or 2 weeks or last week I learned that we're paying extra fees, director fees that could potentially be attributed to this quantum that's been sought today. A couple of weeks ago also we met with Te Runanga o Kirikiriroa, who has a housing project in the pipeline that I believe would benefit greatly from this type of subsidy should we get it over the line. I am supporting this recommendation, subject to the fact that we are able to move things around. So, kia ora.
Thank you. Just can I remind councillors, all councillors, that we talk about the issue, we don't talk about our colleagues in any kind of derogatory way, but we focus our commentary on the issue at hand. Right, we will go to the vote, please. Oh, and I include staff. We don't address staff in a derogatory, all colleagues. To the vote, please. Oh, did you want to write a reply? Sorry, did you want one? You can if you want. Thank you. Thank you. Go to the vote.
The motion is carried, noting that Councillor Bitter is dissenting.
Thank you. And we'll go to item 12, which is the recommendations from Open Committee. Recommendation from the Finance and Monitoring Committee, Maxine, of the 5th. You've moved. Seconded by Moko. Any comments? No. Thank you. And that is it. We'll go to the vote. Oh, we'll do it by hands because it's quite straightforward. We're just moving.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Meeting minutes. That's it.
Move into PX.
We're going to move. I'll move that we move into PX, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favour? Carried. Give us some time, please, councillors.